Like many Idahoans, I grew up enjoying Idaho's countless natural resources. For me, this looked like fishing in our beautiful lakes and rivers, hiking on hiking trails, or simply going camping with family and friends in the Boise National Forest. Idaho boasts activities such as water sports, hiking trails, and biking trails. Now, all of these things are made available to us because they are part of the public lands. Public lands are so valuable, especially to Idahoans, because we have so much to offer. The National Interior describes public lands as land that are open to public use, that cannot be sold or developed on, and are protected by law. So this could look like things like national parks, national monuments, historical sites, and other outdoor attractions. These spaces are so important because they do things like inspire, educate, and even bring fulfillment to friends and family that go out to enjoy them together. Two great examples of public lands would be Mount Rainier National Park, which is one of the most popular parks in America, as well as Cedar Breaks National Monument. Both of these things are a part of public lands, and because they are free to the public, make them so popular and a great option for anyone to go out and enjoy. So, obviously, all Americans should have a vested interest in the outcome of what happens to public lands. But Idahoans in particular should take special care of their public lands and pay attention to legislation in the future that affects them. This is because so much of Idaho is made up of public lands. Currently, 60% of Idaho is considered public lands, which means 34 million acres are available for public use. So, these cannot be managed without organizations that work tirelessly day and night to ensure that the lands are managed properly and taken care of. They also ensure that nothing illegal is happening as far as private companies coming in and exploiting them to make a profit. Unfortunately, much of our public land is currently at risk. There are special interest groups such as the Private Land Council that want to introduce bills and legislation that would make public land private. Now, when public land becomes state-owned, that means it is now vulnerable to being exploited and sold for state profit. If this was to happen, this means the public could no longer enjoy the land. Some people believe that there is value in making public land private. Their main arguments are the fact that it could make good revenue for the state of Idaho, that responsible owners could possibly buy the land and do something different with it, and that it could create jobs or sustainable work. Ultimately, the idea of converting public land to private land would overall be extremely detrimental to Idaho citizens. Now, the previous arguments are based on the incorrect assumption that everyone who buys public land would be responsible owners. But clearly in the past, we see this is simply not true. In 2000, when some public land was made private and state-owned, over 100,000 acres were auctioned off. Now, this is a significant portion of land that unfortunately the public has still not been able to access because the owners decided to make it completely private and no citizens could come on and enjoy the land. But, in contrast, when the land is public, it is made under something called the multiple use mandate. So that means kayakers, fishermen, and hunters. These three different groups can come together and use the land collectively, as long as they are not violating any of the Bureau of Land Management's rulings. But when it is private, the owners have say over what happens, and usually what happens is none of these groups are able to use the land. These two pictures show what possibly could be Idaho's future. This picture shows the fact that so many companies come in with the intent of developing the land, but instead nothing comes to fruition. Their plans fall through, they have irresponsible ownership that is not from in-state, but rather is outsourced or exported into the state of Idaho, and they simply don't care about what truly happens to the land. Instead, all Idahoans need to be thinking of public lands as an asset. Privatized land would result in benefits for a select few. However, if we look at public land, it creates thousands of jobs for countless Idahoans. Organizations like the Bureau of Land Management, the Fish and Game Administration, and the National Forest Conservatory all support thousands of Idahoans that then have careers that are built on protecting public land. and then they use their salaries to stimulate the Idaho economy. The public land is also extremely educational. Universities and schools go on field trips to these public lands and conduct research and experiments in them that not only teaches us more about Idaho's wilderness, but can better the land and help with things like environmental issues and wildlife conservation. Idaho is also what we consider to be a wilderness state because so much of our land is public land. We have a great number of natural resources and geographical features that people like to come in and enjoy, and most of our tourism money is because of these factors. If we were to make public land private, we would be taking some of these benefits away. Public land should be viewed as what one past governor called Idaho's second paycheck. All Idahoans from birth are able to go and enjoy the countless advantages that the public lands have to offer, and therefore we should be protecting them. So I would urge every Idahoan to vote against any legislation that puts them in harm's way or seeks to put them in the hands of private individuals that would then have the opportunity to exploit them. We should also be paying attention to the hard-working organizations that make sure our public lands are being taken care of to the best of their ability. I have also included a petition below. This is just one example of the countless ways we can make our voices heard and let legislators know that we truly care about what happens to our public lands. If collectively all Idahoans show that public lands are so vital to our state, we can not only ensure that they are available for us, but many generations for years to come.